Hey, it's Concrete, back with more Vape Train viewers' choice. So, I'm excited. Looking at the list, I saw that Blood Plum and Apricot were actually on there. So I decided to go ahead and add some Shisha Peach, make this like a little stone fruit mini episode. Again, Vape Train did in fact send me some of these flavors, so thank you, Vape Train. First, I have Vape Train's Apricot. Sounds non-threatening enough, right? Apricot. I like apricot flavors. There's a lot of good apricot flavors. I'm not sure this is one of them. So I do get an apricot here, and the apricot here isn't bad. I want to say it's about as dark as Capella's apricot. Just doesn't have that cool like apricot nectar kind of thickness. This one's a little bit thinner, maybe a little bit brighter. It's not as bright as like TPA's apricot, but it is definitely sort of on the fruitier side as opposed to just the fruit nectar side. With that said, this gets weird quick. So the first weird thing here, this tastes malty to me, and it tastes like a very specific like Cheerios kind of maltiness. There's this sort of warm oat flavor going on throughout the entire thing, which isn't offensive at all, the actual like maltiness here. It's just a little weird, not something I'd usually expect from a fruit. So I can deal with that. What I can't really deal with, I do get a whole lot of off notes here. So cherry flavors, by and large, complete garbage. And my favorite thing in the world is when cherry flavors find their way into other stone fruit. If you look at something like Flavours Nectarine, it just drives me up a wall. This definitely has some cherry off flavors here. It's plasticky, like kind of like a benzene, just unpleasantness all around. And it's not the absolute worst case of cherry off notes that I've ever ran into. You know, shout out to Cap's Grenadine. That stuff is hideous, but it's pretty bad. I don't know. They're fairly prominent at whatever percentage that I've tried this at. So I think because you have all sorts of like wonderful apricot flavors out there. I have a video. I'll link it. There's good apricots. I don't really see a reason to pick this one up or use this one just because those cherry off notes are really a bummer. If you do already have it and you wanted to use it, I mean, maybe start at 1%, but even down that low, I was still getting some of that like weird plastic stuff. So I don't know. I'd probably call this one a miss overall. So with that out of the way, I have Vape Train's Blood Plum. Plum flavors are kind of odd in general. Don't have a ton of experience with them outside of the old Inawera plums. But generally, if somebody wants to put a plum in something, they're not giving you like a fresh, realistic plum. It isn't like that sort of juicy, fairly neutral kind of stone fruit with those interesting accents. It's just like that top-end plum flavor. And I feel like this does that. What I do get here tastes a lot like a sweeter, sort of darker red or Bing cherry kind of body. And then it has a little bit of that darkness on the back end. It's a lot like a fig flavor, just that sort of general, like darker syrupy note. Overall, I think it's done fairly well. It's maybe a little bit bright, I feel like. And while I do get some of those darker syrupy notes, as you start to like increase the percentage, it sort of takes on a little bit of like a floral candy edge. It starts to remind me a lot of TPA's Cherry Blossom in that general like genre of flavors. So while this does have some of that darker syrupy body, I feel like the main thrust of this flavor is maybe a little bit brighter, a little bit more candied. I want to say that it's probably not the best plum for mixing with tobaccos just because it's going to be a little bit on the sweet side. It doesn't have that kind of like musky funk that you really want with like an aggressive tobacco pairing. This is a little bit sweeter, more delicate. It lends itself more towards like candy and fruit mixes. I feel like if you use this at an accent percentage, like maybe 2 to 3%, you can get like a good plum vibe going on in like a more complex like fruit mix. If you want just like a touch of plum, I think that's where I'd use it. I think once you start cranking it up, like 4 or 5%, you really do sort of lean into that plum candy thing. It starts to remind me of like Japanese plum candies, not like the actual pickled ones, but like a sort of vaguely chalky plum flavor. And I think you're going to have a lot of fun with that. But overall, I think this one's really solid. Vape Train does have a generic plum flavor, which I don't have and haven't seen up for sale. But this Blood Plum, not sure why it's a Blood Plum, but it's pretty good. Rounding out this trio of stone fruit, I have Vape Train's Shisha Peach. So, first thought here. This reminds me a lot of FA's White Peach. Not that the flavor is identical. This is definitely a like yellow kind of peach flavor, but just kind of the way it works. So I want to call this more on the realistic side just because it has a fairly like solid tart peach flavor. But I don't get much body out of this. It's kind of dry and it's a little bit harsh. It feels more like a peach booster than a solid individual peach. An ongoing issue that crops up with yellow peach flavors, if they're sweeter and they have more body, they tend to taste a little bit more like peach rings, like the candy. This by itself doesn't really do that, but I think most of that's up to the fact that there isn't a whole bunch of like sugary or thick like candy body to this. It's sweet, but it's not like candy sweet, and that dryness kind of pulls it away from a peach rings profile. I think that this is going to be one of those flavors, like if you paired it up with another peach, like, I don't know, JF's Honey Peach, Flavora Peach, even like an Awara Peach, and any of those peaches, it's going to sort of ramp up that peach rings kind of flavor, but by itself, I don't think it gets you all the way to peach rings, which is positive. Because this is a little bit drier and a little bit harsher, I can't get this to a percentage where I'm really getting as much peach as I'd want without it vaping kind of weird, so I think it's going to be more useful sort of as that peach booster or a peach accent in profiles that are mostly doing something else. I think if you had like a peaches and cream recipe, right, and you wanted to go for not a super realistic, but slightly artificial kind of peach flavor, I feel like you could use something like this with like a cream base, so you could get a good amount of that sort of vaguely artificial peach flavor without really pulling the texture of the cream completely off. I also feel like if you want to make like a peach jam or something like that, this would actually be workable. You'd have to darken it up a little bit, probably with some like Flavor Art Liquid Amber or something, but you would be able to get like a peach flavor that didn't go completely full on peach rings as soon as it actually hit a mix, which would be nice. A lot of people have problems with peach flavors in general in terms of throat hit. I feel like if like TPA's Juicy Peach is harsh for you, this is definitely also going to be on the harsh side. It has that same kind of throat hit to it. But overall, I like it. I'm just a little bit mystified by it. So I would be using it sort of as a peach accent as opposed to a full primary peach to either boost up artificial peach flavors or add like a hint of peach into a more complex mix. Again, this reads is pretty aggressive to me. I think Vape Train's suggested mixing percentages for this are like 2 to 5%, which is on the low side for their suggested mixing percentages. I'd be even a little bit more cautious than that, just because I feel like this can very easily sort of dry out and add a pretty sizable throat hit to a mix. I'd probably be around 1%, but I think even at 1%, it does add like a pretty nice peach inflection to whatever you're mixing with. So this one's interesting. So just 3 stone fruit flavors. No big deal, right? Relatively quick and painless. So thank you to everybody who actually picked out these flavors in the viewer's choice thing. That's awesome. Next video will probably be more viewer's choice. Also have the new Capella Silverline flavors that I want to go over, so be on the lookout for a video on those. If you wanted to check out the more detailed flavor reviews on my super professional website, tasteofconcrete.com. There will be links down in the description. So, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will catch you later.